You're listening to the Speaking Tongues podcast. I'm your host, El Charisse. Each week, I sit down to a conversation with multilinguals where we discuss and celebrate language, life, and culture through our own perspectives. Episode 56, Speaking Serbian, Slovenian, Russian, and German. Hello, language lovers. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Speaking Tongues, the podcast and conversation with multilinguals. This week, my guest is Dina, the host of Slavstvuyte Podcast, and we're discussing her languages of Serbian, Slovenian, Russian, and German. Now, this is the first time on the show that we're talking about Serbian and Slovenian, and I was so excited to have this conversation to learn from Dina. In this episode, she tells us about moving to Slovenia from Serbia as a teenager and what her experience was like having to navigate school and social life in a new language that she didn't understand. We also talk about mutual intelligibility among Slavic languages, including a dialect of Serbian that shares words with Macedonian and Bulgarian. Dina tells us how the Turkish language has influences on the Serbian language, and we also talk about how she grew to love Russian and the complicated feelings that come from growing apart from her Serbian roots. And because we're discussing a region that has had some big changes in the recent past, we also discuss the Serbo-Croatian language and its controversies. Big thank you to Dina for having this conversation with me and for sharing your languages and your cultures. If you want to hear more about Slavic languages, make sure you listen to the Slavstvuyte Podcast, which you will find a link to in the show notes. And if you enjoy this episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the Speaking Tongues podcast on Apple Podcasts so that other language lovers like ourselves can find the show. If you've been a longtime listener of the show or a recent listener, you can now support the show on buymeacoffee.com. Links to all platforms are in the show notes. Okay, let's chat. Welcome back to another episode of Speaking Tongues. I am here today with Dina. How are you today, Dina?
Hi, Elle. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very good. I'm super excited to talk to you about all of my languages that you listed. Yeah, I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm so excited to chat with you. And I like to start each episode with the same question, and that is, what is your first language and which languages have you learned to speak?
So my first language is Serbian. I was born in Serbia and grew up in Serbia until the age of 15. So I can say with confidence that it is really my first language. And then I moved to Slovenia at the age of 15, and there I learned English, Slovene, and yeah, I learned a lot of English and German in school. That's basic knowledge of any language that you get in school, and then of course English came with this internet social media thing. Uh, and then I moved to Vienna to study there, and that's when I learned German. Actually, I thought I knew it, yeah, but that's when I really learned it. And I'm studying my bachelors are in Russian, so yeah, Russian is the last one that I learned.
Wow, that's so exciting.
It's a mix of Slavic languages and then a little bit of Germanic languages that
Yeah.
came along because not really because I wanted to, but because I needed them.
When you were growing up in your house in Serbia, I guess, what languages did you hear in your home or in your community when you were growing up?
I grew up in a small town in the south of Serbia, so there isn't many um other languages to be heard. There aren't many other languages to be heard except Serbian. So we spoke this mix of standard Serbian and dialect, Southern dialect that is called Torlakian dialect, which is pretty much a mix of um, Bulgarian, Bulgarian, Macedonian, and Serbian. I mean, it has its those two languages had a lot of influence on the dialect. So that's pretty much and a lot of Turkish words as well. So I can say that as it can be totally unintelligible to the people from central Serbia or northern Serbia, which is
Really?
not which is not the case with other Serbian dialects. So I
Right.
guess I'm um bi-dialectal. I speak standard Serbian and then this Torlakian dialect, which is really unique and actually pretty nice. I mean, it is considered like a rural dialect, and not a lot of people are encouraged to speak it. But as I grew up and of course started learning other languages and other Slavic languages, I realized how much this knowledge of Torlakian dialect actually helps me with other Slavic languages, not just the standard Serbian, but yeah, this Torlakian dialect actually is a really rich in this older Slavic terms and older Slavic constructions that then help me understand other Slavic languages better than maybe someone that only spoke standard Serbian.
Interesting. That's really
Yeah.
interesting. I was going to ask you, you mentioned Bulgarian and Macedonian. Is there any intelligibility between that dialect and those two languages?
Yes, yes. Since Bulgarian border is not that far away, I think it's around 100 kilometers. I don't know how much it is in miles, but um, so it's not that far away. And actually, Macedonia as well. Um, I can say with confidence that I can understand 90% of Macedonian, standard Macedonian. I'm not
Yeah.
talking about the dialect, but they actually have a dialect that is spoken then closer to the border with Serbia, which is then different from standard Macedonian and more and closer to Torlakian dialect, which I speak at home. And yeah, that one is 100% intelligible. But with standard Macedonian, I mean 85 to 90% depending on the topic, um I can understand. With Bulgarian, it's a little bit harder, um because well, Bulgarian has a lot of shared vocabulary with Russian, and that's why I can understand. But
Mm,
when talking about from the point of view of speaking Terlakian dialect, it's um it's a little bit harder to understand it when it's spoken. I don't think I can. I tried a couple of times to watch some Bulgarian shows, and yeah, that's a no go. But when it's written down, um, I can say around 50% what it's written down can be understood.
Okay.
So I don't know if that depends. I mean, it is. It certainly depends on the other Slavic languages that you speak. I speak. So Russian really helps me with that. But I think my parents can also understand a lot of what it's written in Bulgarian just because we are familiar with the Torlakian dialect that then
Hmm.
shares a lot of vocabulary with both Bulgarian and Macedonian.
Yeah. That's so interesting. While you were talking, I just Googled a map so I can orient myself when
Mhm.
you're talking about the borders and everything. So I guess, yeah, it does make sense that like that area, and plus because it's so like, I don't know if this is the right word, but it's like it's so ancient, like the society there in that part of Europe, it precedes modern day borders. So it makes sense like why there would be um well, to me it makes sense why there would be a dialect that you can understand with a different like standard language. It totally makes sense. So when you were in school, I guess before you moved to Slovenia and when you moved to Slovenia, what kind of what languages were you exposed to in your studies?
Well, in Serbia, that was Serbian obviously, and then English and German. And my parents really tried to expose us to English as much as they can. I mean, they don't speak English, but they encouraged us to watch all of these Cartoon Network things, and send us to private schools for English. I guess learning English wasn't something that I did on purpose. It's something that my parents took care of while we were kids. And then this school taught English didn't help me that much. I was already fluent. I won't say fluent, but intermediate. When I started school,
Okay.
so that didn't help me that much. But with German, school set some basics, so taught me some basics, and then but I learned German for 8 years actually. That were that that was more than basics, but I guess I mean I really loved learning German. I guess I just didn't realize how much I didn't know before moving to Austria. And yeah, when I moved to Slovenia, my parents enrolled me into public school that was in Slovene for everyone.
Hmm.
And I came with zero Slovene knowledge. So that was also another language that I was um, exposed to. I tried some French, but it didn't work out. um, yeah, so I guess the biggest challenge was actually Slovene. That was
Okay.
actually the biggest challenge, the the thing that I had to learn, that I was forced. I couldn't go to school. I couldn't do anything without learning that language. So I guess that's the language that caused me a lot of headaches.
Oh no.
No, but actually I really love it now. Now, after eight
After all this
years.
time, yeah.
Yeah.
When you moved to Slovenia and obviously you're taking your lessons in this language that you have no knowledge of before, did the school or was the school able to enroll you in Slovene classes so that you could catch up, or were you just like thrown to the wolves?
At first, I think it was the first year I was completely clueless, and nobody cared. And I actually had, because I mean, I don't know if your listeners know this, so I'm just gonna say it. Slovenia was a part of a former Yugoslavian republic, which was consisted of Serbia, Croatia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Macedonia, and then Slovenia, of course. And they all had to learn Serbo-Croatian. So a lot of my teachers actually spoke Serbian, Serbo-Croatian. Then they encouraged me to speak in whatever language I can. Just the important thing for them was for me to learn things, to learn the stuff, not the language.
Yeah.
But I found that bad because I really tried to learn the language. I really tried to speak the language. So it was good knowing that they will understand me either way, but I really didn't let that be the safety net. And then to just um you know not learn the language and not speak the language of the country that I'm living in. I was then in second year of high school when they decided that it was time to give me some free lessons with Slovene teacher. But I didn't use them for learning the language because I actually spoke by that time I already spoke Slovene fluently, so I didn't need it for as a language course. I used them for, covering the material that we actually did in regular Slovene class.
Mhm.
So it was a nice thing that they did, but a little too late.
Yeah.
Um, because I needed it in the first year, not later.
How were you able to pick up Slovene so quickly?
I picked it up really quickly. Yeah, the Slavic language family is similar. I mean, the languages are similar, and since a lot of people in Slovenia know Serbian and add Serbian words into their vocabulary and the slang, um, that was actually helpful. But the thing that was bothering me the most, because I tried to learn Slovene before coming to Slovenia, to do some courses and things like that, but that didn't work out. But I had something in a couple of sentences in my head, and I had an idea of how this language works. But by the time that I actually moved and um started school, I realized that the dialect that is spoken in Ljubljana, so I was living in Ljubljana, is something completely different. So
Wow.
it's like almost like an entire another language, and it had nothing to do with what I tried to study. And I was pretty devastated because I was like, okay, I have to be in Slovene class and speak proper Slovene, and then I have to interact with other people and live there actually, and learn this other language, this dialect that they
Yeah.
spoke. But eventually, I don't know. I can't tell you how, but I was surrounded by the language every day, and I studied in that language. I interacted with people in that language. And I think it was 6, 7 months that it took me to become fluent. Um, because yeah, I mean Serbian helped with that a lot. Um, but now, I mean, my parents tease me all the time because I change my voice. I change the um I change the way I speak. I change my gestures and everything when I speak Slovene. So it's like I'm a completely different person, and they tease me because of that. But I had a lot of people coming up to me and starting a conversation and then realizing that I am not a native speaker and being completely shocked because I picked it up really good.
That's
Yeah, I mean,
amazing.
it didn't it took me a while, but by the time I was in my last year, we had this it, I mean matura exam. It's like this final exam in Slovene, math, and then a couple of other subjects. And I actually did really good on the Slovene exam, which surprised me a lot and surprised my Slovene teacher because she was never really um that confident with the fact that I'm there in her class and that I will actually succeed, um which made me really proud. And yeah, this is something that, I mean, in the final year I was really, I could say that it is my second language, so my L2.
Hmm.
Now I'm not using it anymore. um I'm speaking it mostly to my parents sometimes, um and that's it. And when I go to Slovenia, that's a couple of sentences at the shop or something like that. So I can't say that with confidence that it's still my L2, but it's
Yeah,
still my first foreign language. It's still the language that I'm most comfortable in, um the foreign language that I'm most comfortable in.
yeah, yeah. You know what I think is really interesting? Like, you were at that age where you were able to, I hate to say this, like, learn a language really quickly. Because they always say, like, when you're younger, it's easier to, pick up a language. But I actually think that being in high school, and I don't know about you, but I feel like high school kids are hyper observant because we're all trying to fit in. So we're
Yeah.
paying attention to what everyone's doing. How can I do it like them? How can I, I guess mimic? Like we're in that mimicking
Mm.
kind of phase. And I think it's so interesting when you said, like, um, excuse me, when you said that you picked it up to an extent where people were mistaking you for a native speaker. And I think that if you had tried to learn Slovene, probably, as an adult or later in life, I don't think that you may not have people, mistake you for a native speaker because you were probably like, you're in a new city, you're in a new country, and you're just, when you can't communicate, all you can do is observe, right? So, um, I think that's really amazing that you were able. I think it's really amazing you were able to do that, first of all. But it just made me think about like how teenagers have that ability because they're always paying attention to like everything that's going on so that they can fit in, so they could
Yeah.
be like everybody else.
Yeah, I mean, even the topics that I pick when I speak Slovene are completely different from the topics that I pick when I speak Serbian or any other language. It's because I actually learned from these kids in school, and I learned and I observed what they talked about. And I guess it stayed with me. I don't know. And I kind
Yeah.
of I don't know. I think of myself when I speak Slovene, I think of myself as less smart because of the topics that I pick,
Hmm.
because these are this high school things, gossiping, and what phone do you have, and things like that. It's not that I'm not familiar with the other vocabulary. It's that every time I talk to my friends from high school, um okay, it's a friend, it's it's in singular. I always pick, I don't know, I don't know why, but I always pick this less intelligent topics.
Yeah.
Um,
It's kind of embarrassing to think about the things I talked about in high school, like nonstop. So I can only imagine.
yeah, that's the uh that's the base that I built on, the language, and that's the first thing that comes to my mind. Of
Mhm.
course, I can talk about other things, but those are the that's my instinct,
Yeah.
to talk about these things. And um I have a friend that is actually not from Ljubljana. She's from suburbs, and they speak completely different then, and it's like
Hmm.
20 kilometers away. And she's always like, also teasing me, because a lot of people from outside of Ljubljana can hear when you're from Ljubljana, and they
Hmm.
actually hate it. It sounds like, um it sounds fake, and it sounds like we from Ljubljana want to sound, more intelligent and more sophisticated, but it actually sounds bad. Yeah, that's how I feel when I speak that Ljubljana dialect. That's what I feel. I feel like I'm trying to, fit in this cool world that I actually don't like, and that I actually don't belong to.
Hmm.
But that's what they taught me.
Yeah. And it's not, it's definitely, I think it's a big city phenomenon, like
Yeah.
the same thing with New York. If somebody moved to New York from, the middle of the States and they come here, they're going to affect the way that we speak here in New York. And I'm sure their friends back home would be like, who do you think you're talking to?
Yeah, yeah.
I love hearing stories like that because like, well, for me, like I am from New York City, so and I feel like I say that like a little bit too much. I think people get it by now, like, okay, she can stop talking about it. But I'm always so interested from perspectives of like people who didn't grow up in this like metropolitan environment because, you know, when you grow up in a big city, like everyone has this kind of like, oh, who do you think you are? You're so
Yeah.
pretentious. You're so stuck up. I mean, and it's kind of refreshing to know that no matter where you are in the world, there's always that big city that people think that you're such a snob because
Yeah.
because you're from there. Um, so you actually mentioned something, and I didn't like write this in my notes, but I'm just picking up on what you said about the Serbo-Croatian dialect, like language that people had to learn when those countries were part of
No,
Yugoslavia.
Yugoslavia.
Sorry, Yugoslavia. Okay. So Yugoslavia, which is so funny because I have an old atlas that Yugoslavia is still a country on it. And I love looking at it from time to time because it's like, how did we came so far in like, 25, 30 years or so? Like, it's just, anyway, I'm getting off topic. So the languages that were spoken in Yugoslavia, and now all of these countries are their own countries with their own languages. What are some things, and you said a little bit about this before, but what are some things that they have in common, and what are some things that differentiate them?
Well, when it comes to Slovene and Macedonian, they are two separate languages. They're not um, mutually intelligible. I mean, they are, but not to the extent that it really is something that you can understand really easy. But when it comes to that Serbo-Croatian language, which is a very controversial topic, and I'm going to, just say this from my point of view. Of course, maybe some people won't agree with that, but I still think of this language, this Serbo-Croatian language, as one language. I still think of it as a language with is a pluricentric language actually, and I think the politics affected it a lot. And now we have Croatian, Serbian, and Bosnian, which are and Montenegrin, of course, which are we completely understand everything. We're 100%. They're 100% intelligible.
Okay.
It's just that, of course, like in every dialect, there are some differences in the vocabulary, but it's not something that is so dramatic and we so drastic. Oh my God, so drastic that the other side can't understand. You
Okay.
know, I also have friends from southern Serbia, from northern Serbia, that use some words that I don't know, but that doesn't make it other another language. That
Yeah.
it's just a dialect. And well, this whole Serbo-Croatian thing is really messed up because now they are trying to separate them on purpose by inventing new words and adding um things are not that are actually not belonging in there. It's just politics.
Yeah.
um but when it comes to Slovenian and Macedonian, um I can say that, well, vocabulary is something that is, the the thing that is um that can be spotted um easily, and you can say that there is, of course, common vocabulary. But Slovene, for example, is was more exposed to German throughout the history, and that's why there are a lot of German words or German words with German origin that are not present in Serbian and Serbo-Croatian and whatever. On the other hand, we have a lot of Turkish words.
Hmm.
So Serbian, that's maybe something that can be also a difference between Croatian and Serbian, is that Serbian is full of Turkish words. There are some Turkish words in Croatian as well, but not not that much. I mean, but Serbian is actually full of them, and this is something that makes it a little bit harder for people um, with other Slavic languages as mother tongues to understand Serbian.
Hmm.
It's because, yeah, the words are not of Slavic origin. Some words, a lot of words actually.
Do you know why that is?
Yes, we were a part of Ottoman Empire for 500 years.
I am so dumb. Wow. Okay.
No, no, it's just um I was talking about that with my parents yesterday, and um thinking about whether Turkish people actually know that nowadays. Because Ottoman Empire was so big, and I don't think they actually pay that much attention that, Serbia was a part of that. But we we do. It's a huge part of our history. Yeah, that's why these basic things, these everyday things are of Turkish origin. I don't know, fork, spoon, pillow, this domestic things. I guess they had to communicate with each other, and then picked up these things that are used the most, these words that are used the most. I mean, I have a trick where if something if a word is different in Serbian and the same in all other Slavic languages, I'm 90% sure it's from a Turkish
It's
origin.
Turkish. Huh.
Yeah. So that's really, the thing that differentiates us from other Yugoslavian languages.
Right. Right.
Macedonian has a lot of Turkish words as well as Bulgarian, but I don't know to which amount, to what extent. I just know that they were also part of Ottoman Empire, and that is actually, logically, I think that they have
Yeah.
some Turkish words, but I'm not familiar with the amount of words that are. But I know that in Serbian is there's a lot of words.
Okay. So, um, Russian. You're learning Russian or you're studying Russian? You've learned Russian, you speak Russian, right?
Yes.
Okay. How how different is Russian from Slovene, from um, Serbian, from the languages of the Yugoslavian region?
Well, um, pretty different, but not that different. That it's completely different thing. Um, I can say that, of course, knowing speaking this Terlakian dialect and then speaking Slovene really helped me with Russian, because when it comes to this case system, for example, um, Serbian does it a little bit different differently than Slovene and Russian. So, this knowledge of Slovene helped me, you know, place this Russian cases in the right place, um, in the right box. When it comes to vocabulary, Russian was really exposed to um, French, for example, um, back in 19th century. Um, French was the official language in Russia. Well, the official. It was um it was a language of the elite, and a lot of famous Russian poets and writers actually learned French first and then Russian second.
Hmm.
Um so Russian is filled with this French words of French origin that are then not present in other Slavic languages. Russian has a lot of a couple of different sounds that don't exist in Serbian and in Slovene. For example, sound sh does not exist in Slovene nor in Serbian. We only have hard sh. Then there is the soft sign and hard sign that is a mess. The main thing actually that causes troubles for people from former Yugoslavian republics in Russian um are these and um soft and hard letters. So every time you have a vowel be after a consonant, well, a specific vowel, but I won't get into that. You have to pronounce the consonant softly. So if we say, for example, in Serbian, we say glagol. In Russian, they say glagol.
Mm,
With different taste, with different softness. You have to add this softness. Um, and those are the things that make people s- find Russian really hard. Because you really have to concentrate on that before it becomes a habit. You really have to focus on whether a consonant is pronounced soft or hard.
mhm.
So I guess that's not present in other Yugoslavian languages. Let's call them like that. That's not present. So, um, but when it comes to this sentence structures and um different grammatical forms and yeah, that is familiar to us as well. For
Okay.
example, I mean, I learned Russian in Austria, and the program is, I mean, adjusted to people whose mother tongue is German.
Mm,
So we had to learn a lot of things that I'm already familiar with that I don't need an explanation for. For example, we have all Slavic languages have this aspect thing where a verb can be perfect or perfective or imperfective, depending on the type of action or if the action is repeated a lot of times or happened just one time. And this is actually something that comes naturally to Slavic speakers, but is I learned that it's not that simple for anyone else that is not familiar with this concept. So
right.
those are the things that actually where actually the knowledge of other Slavic languages helped me with learning Russian.
Okay. What made you decide to learn Russian?
I genuinely don't know. I always liked but this is such a cliche answer. But I always really liked reading, and then I read Crime and Punishment in my third year of high school, and I was like, okay, this is really good. It would be really nice if I could read this in Russian. And I actually really loved the concept of learning another language that is similar but so different from my mother tongue.
Mhm.
So it's a little bit of literature and then a little bit of me being a language nerd.
So going back to Serbia and Slovenia too, what are some things that you would want people to know about those countries that they may not know or that they may have the wrong idea about?
I don't know how it is in the US, but I think a lot of people have this wrong idea of Serbia being um still in war. That's one thing.
Mm,
Um um or being, violent nation or um rude nation, which is actually completely opposite. We are really friendly. I mean, most of us. Um, really friendly and really, um, caring about foreigners that come to Serbia. We really try to be as forthcoming as we can, um and we have really great food, and we really have a lot of energy, and we're really trying to stay together as a nation, and trying to you know be social as we can, even in corona times. I was in the city center today, and they opened cafes today after a long time, and people are just like sitting there. I'm like, oh my god, you don't have to be that social. But I guess when you come to Serbia, all of the restaurants are full. All of cafes are full. Streets are full. I love our our festivals, the things that connect us, our tradition, everything that I learned growing up, but that I actually don't fit into the mentality anymore.
Mm,
I don't fit in, and I'm glad that I don't fit in,
hmm.
because yeah, it's something that I actually grew apart with, and I I I I really had this ideal picture of Serbia when I was living in Slovenia, and really loved being part of this nation, and I still love being part of this nation. I just
Yeah.
don't like being the same as a lot of people here. And I
Hmm.
mean, it's a shame, it's sad, because this is where I grew up with. This is my hometown. But every time I come here, I wasn't here for a year and a half. This is the first time I came. I'm in Serbia right now. Um, and this is the
Hmm.
first time I came after a year and a half, and that I realized um that I just this is not where I belong. This is not where I belong anymore.
Yeah, I think that's normal, and that happens when you see new things for yourself.
Yes. And
Yeah.
this is actually a small town thing. When you move from a small town into a big city like Vienna, for example.
Hmm. You had experience with German before you moved to Austria, to Vienna. But when you got to Vienna, what was that experience like with communicating in German, speaking in German? How is the German different in Austria than it is in Germany or in? Uh,
So different. So different that I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've stared at people, being like, okay, this is really the most basic thing that they are asking me, and I don't know what they're asking me. When I moved to Vienna, I was pretty confident that I speak German really well. And that's why I didn't take any preparation courses for university, which a lot of people do. They spend 1 year learning German, and then they enroll. Um, but yeah, I thought I already I can already speak German, so I was like, okay, I don't need it. It's a waste of money. I will just, start college right away. And it turned out that I actually did not understand what I was studying. I enrolled, and I read everything online, and everything was in German. I was like, okay, this has something to do with languages and then
Mm-hmm.
culture, because the program was called transcultural communication. So it was like, okay, learning how you will communicate with other cultures, blah blah blah. Turns out it was, just a normal translation program.
Oh, oh.
And I didn't want that.
Yeah.
And I realized that, halfway through my first year that I actually enrolled to be a translator. I was like, no, I didn't want that. This is not what I wanted. This is not what I ordered. This is, that's how good my German was. And I remember, sitting in class and understanding every 10th word, but I had a lot of luck actually that there is a huge Balkan community in Vienna,
Mm.
and there is always someone that speaks Yugoslavian languages in every room, in every institution. And I managed to, find friends that can help me understand what professors are saying, to summarize that for me. So that was really helpful when it came to studying for university. I learned questions by heart. I learned things by heart, just memorizing what the question looks like, or the number of the question, or what letter does the right answer starts with, and not understanding what it's really about.
Mm.
So that lasted for a year, and then I decided to study Russian, and I still stayed friends with the Balkan community. It's just that I was exposed to more German when studying Russian. And
Right.
I had a lot of Austrian colleagues that I talked to, and eventually I became fluent. And it's not that I became fluent with 100% confidence. No, I still struggle with, for example, with this Dinas articles that mark gender of a noun. That's a nightmare, and I think I will never be
Oh,
able to
yeah.
fully to fully understand how it works.
That's tough.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so but I can say that I am much more comfortable um than 5 years ago when I moved to Vienna. And the things that are different in Austrian German, um I think that Austrian German is softer than German German, that is Hochdeutsch. The pronunciation is softer, and I really like how Austrian German sounds. Yeah, I know a lot of people don't like how German sound, it sounds so harsh,
Mm.
but this Austrian version is actually a lot softer, and it has some different words that are actually a product of contact with Slavic world,
Okay.
too. But then also with Hungarians and etc. Um, that Germans didn't have.
I want to talk about your podcast and your platform. And before I even ask you a question, how do I pronounce it? So I'm not pronouncing it wrong.
Slavstvuyte.
Slav Sweet Sweetia?
Yeah, Slavstvuyte.
Okay. So tell us about Slav Sweetia. What does it mean? Tell me how you got started. Tell me what the show is about and some of the things that you enjoy about talking to people who speak Slavic languages. Tell us some things you've learned and some things that have surprised you. And of course, most importantly, tell us where we can listen, where we can find you.
Yeah, so Slavstvuyte actually was born in December in a lockdown, where all of our ideas are born.
Oh, yeah.
Um, I thought about starting something like that a couple of years ago, but then I realized, I thought that I don't have the capacity to do that and that I will fail. And then in December, I just thought, if I fail, okay, I tried, at least I tried.
Yeah.
So I decided to do it for myself, not to do it for, anybody else. I decided to do that because I wanted to. And what what I really like, what my idea actually was, is to bring these languages closer to people that do speak them, but also to people who don't. Also, to people who don't have a clue about what Slavic languages are and where they're spoken. And that's what that's why I try to talk about topics that make Slavic languages special. I had a conversation um with Jared from Weekly Linguist, where I told him that Slavic languages, most of Slavic languages, build future tense with the verb to be, not with the verb to want.
Hmm.
Um, and his mind was like, "Wow!" It was blown away, because it's something
Yeah.
that I don't know, English speaking people don't know, and that find really fascinating. People that don't speak Slavic languages, not just English speaking. Um, but that's something that is actually really present in most of Slavic languages. So that kind of things, I wanted people to know, because I think a lot of podcasts that are dealing with languages are talking about either all of them or English.
Hmm.
Some of them do German, but it's, just learning German, not the linguistics, but the language course. And I never found anything that is about Slavic languages. And I realized that can be a really interesting thing, really interesting topic. And it turned out great because I I somehow managed to collect a lot of people who are fascinated by Slavic languages as well as I am. Um, and Slavstvuyte actually doesn't mean anything. It's just a combination of the word Slavic, and the Russian word Здравствуйте, which is hello in Russian.
Oh,
Um, yeah, so it's Slavstvuyte. um,
I like it.
and I did it in English. A lot of people ask me, why do you do it in English? If it's about Slavic languages, why do you speak English? And I love speaking English. I love English language, and I want people from all over the world to be able, at least, to understand what I'm talking about, not
Hmm.
just, a certain group of people that are speaking Russian or Serbian or Slovene. I want people that don't have anything to do with Slavic languages to be able to understand.
Yeah.
So, I had a lot of doubts when starting it in English, but then I realized, um, it's a good thing and it's a thing that can actually help me a lot. And I had a lot of hate comments, you were you are Americanized, and trying to fit into this American picture, American world. I don't find that bad, actually. I would love to.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's fair because like you said, you're talking about Slavic languages and a lot of people are interested in Slavic languages, but I think there's also a great deal of people who don't know much about Slavic languages and they don't
Exactly.
really understand, I think a lot of people would hear Russian. I mean, I'm sorry. I think a lot of people would hear Slavic and they would automatically just think Russian.
Yes.
And what you're doing is you are informing people that it's not just this one language, which I think is more important to do in English because if you're talking in Serbian, if you already speak Serbian, chances are that
Exactly.
this is a Slavic language. So you'd be just talking to the same people that don't need this information. So I think it makes sense for you to do it in English.
Yeah, yeah, it made a lot of sense to me because I'm actually also talking about the languages like Czech or Polish that I don't speak, um, but are similar to other Slavic languages and have a lot of interesting features
Hmm.
um, that I love discovering and learning about myself. Um, and it wouldn't make sense to, talk about that in Serbian, or in Russian, because I don't think a lot of people would be interested in what's going on in Polish, um, in Serbia,
Right,
or in
right.
Russia.
And tell us where we can listen and how we can find you.
Um, you can find me on Instagram on Slavstvuyte with Y. So Slavstvuyte. And you can also find me on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, on Podcast Addicts, and a lot of others actually. But those are the three main platforms that users use. And
Yeah,
then on Buzzsprout. So if you type slavstvuyte.buzzsprout.com, you will also get all of my episodes listed there, so you can listen.
I will, for those of you who are listening and want to get in touch and want to listen to the podcast, I have all the links in the show notes and can check it out and listen as soon as you have an opportunity to do so. Dina, I learned so much from you this time we were talking. Like, I have a lot more learning to do, but this was a great introduction for me because there's so much that I didn't know, and I'm always happy to talk to people who are really living in the language and living in certain parts of the world who can explain things from their own perspective. Um, I do encourage everyone to read all the time, and I need to follow my own advice a little bit more, but it's always so much fun to talk to someone and to learn about their language
Yeah.
firsthand. Yeah, so thank you so much for joining me in this episode. And I have one last question for you. Do you have any jokes, tongue twisters, cool slang words, idioms, words of wisdom, or words of advice in Serbian, Slovene, Russian, or German to share?
We have a tongue twister, um Čokančićem ću te, čukamčićem ćeš me.
Okay.
Uh it's actually, it means, you will hit me with a bowl, metal bowl, It's
Mm-hmm.
trocante. It's a metal bowl. Is actually a Turkish word, by the way.
Oh,
And I will hit you with that, and you will hit me back. So trokantitim tute, trokantitim tishme. Um,
okay. All
when it
right.
comes to
Because
cool,
you're gonna have to teach me that tongue twister. So just get ready.
yeah. So trokantitim tute, trokantitim tishme.
Okay, we're gonna break this down even slower.
Okay. So, I will say one syllable and then you will repeat after me.
Yes.
Cho,
Cho,
ka,
ka,
chi,
chi,
chem,
chem,
chu,
chu,
te,
te,
cho,
cho,
kan,
kan,
chi,
chi,
chem,
chem,
chesh,
chesh,
me.
me.
Yeah, great.
Okay.
You're really like your ch is really great. You're pronouncing that really good. A lot of people have a hard time pronouncing ch, and they always pronounce it as ch or something like that. But your ch is really great. I'm really proud of you.
Oh, pat myself on the back here.
Yeah. Um, when it comes to cool slangy words, um, I mean, we say, um, we say, um, for for a thing that is really cool, we say strava, which is actually um like scary. You know, strava, we say a house of terror is kuća strave. So it's actually like fear or scary, but when we want to say that something is really cool, we say strava. I don't know what that is. It's like it's scary how good it is.
Brava.
Yeah.
Well, Dina, thank you again so much.
Thank
And
you
this
too.
is really such a pleasure to have this conversation with you and to learn about Slavic languages. Um, really quickly, do not think too hard about this. But in this situation where we've been talking for all this time, what would be the best way to say goodbye?
Well, to say goodbye in all of my languages would be one thing. So, do widzenia in Serbian, um, до свидания in Russian, auf Wiedersehen in German, and oh my god, my brain blocked. На свидания in Slovene.
Thank you so much, and
Thank you too, Elle.
I'll be talking to you soon.
Yeah, thanks.
Bye.
Bye.